Welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. My name is Max Cohen of the Museum of Crypto Art. I am joined on this week's edition of the Mocha Live podcast, as I am every week, by the founder of the Museum of Crypto Art, Coborn Bell. Coborn, what's up?
Hello. Always a pleasure. I'm excited to do this, and each week that goes by, I get more and more excited.
Just give it until a year from now when you're dreading every Wednesday.
Exactly.
Coborn, I got to ask you the question on everyone's mind, which is, did you watch the Super Bowl?
I kind of watched the Super Bowl. It didn't.
Man.
I was there. I was there.
You were at the Super Bowl?
No. I was. It was happening. It definitely was happening.
So no opinions on the call at the end of the game, nothing like that. No.
Oh, I thought it was
hot
horrendous.
takes.
I thought it was horrendous.
Yeah.
Make them. What was it like? Kick a field goal and then give them like a minute and a half to go down there and win it.
Yeah. You know, we do have a large audience of NFL referees who watch this podcast and listen along. And we just like to say to all the referees, we know you're doing the best you can, but just think about the circumstance at the end of the games, and also, you know, the viewers at home who are looking for a classic ending.
Yeah,
But
let's think of one of like your battering ram segues, you know? So I was either going to go with it's like the NFL is either as like controlled and manipulated as the crypto art space, or I was gonna say like something about games are silly. Let's concentrate on love.
yeah, how about this? How about the ending of that game was something I hate.
Yeah.
But today we want to talk about some things we love.
Thanks.
Yesterday was Valentine's Day, so we thought that it'd be nice to go full on positivity on our podcast this week. Talk about some things we love, some pieces, some artists, some stories we've loved from the last year, trends we've loved, artists. I think I may have mentioned artists, but it's always worth mentioning artists we love twice. So Colburn, the first thing I want to ask you is, what was the first thing or things that made you fall in love with crypto art?
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, the very first day I was on Super Rare, that was the first platform that I was introduced to. It actually was 3 years and 2 days ago. We can thank the blockchain for that.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah. And now I also realized I missed some friends' birthdays, but that's not important. There were three pieces that I came across. But I'm gonna say for me, it was really the work of Max Osiris. That's where I fell in love. It was psychedelic, visionary art, unlike anything I had seen on the internet. It was so unique, so expressive, so wild, so free, and I loved it. I just loved it. It's inexplicable to speak to the connection. But over time, even just to see the work, right? To see the work, I think these things are so expressive into people's souls. There's so much that can be read into, and I think people that really create from the heart, they pour it out onto the canvas. And for me, I just felt that. I felt him, I felt myself in it. And that was an incredible spark.
Did you come across his work on your own, or did another artist show you his work, or
Everything I did in the beginning was just on my own. I don't know if it was in the timeline. The first piece I bought was a Miss Al Simpson piece, and who's to say how I got anywhere I did? But his was the second piece that I bought. And then I remember like a month, I bought it for like $20. I sold it a month later for like $80. I thought it was a genius. I think I've sold like 9 pieces ever. And I think in selling that one, I was like, oh no, I should never sell that.
Yeah, what a wholesome story. The origins of crypto art. 4x profit, In
a month, I was like, I'm out here just crushing it. Bear market, 2020.
Well,
it was funny.
It's like they say the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is winning big at the blackjack table your first time.
Yeah.
Because you can never get up. Then you're just chasing that high forever.
Right.
And that was you making $60 on a Max Osiris piece.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this question myself, and I was reminded of a time when we were all up in Kingston, at the Mocha Church, and I know you were there, I know I was there, I think Untitled was there, Shivani was there. Most importantly, though, um, Renee Schmidt, our CTO, was there. And the reason it's most importantly is because we were all sitting together at some German restaurant waiting for our food, and he was showing me some pieces that he'd collected just on his phone. And he showed me this piece by GE1 Doot, who I will hitherto refer to as Gel Doot, um, because I don't actually know how to pronounce it. This Gerard Ferrandez, by the way, just an incredible generative artist and makes artwork that I've never seen approximated anywhere else. And the piece that Renee had showed me was part of Geldut's Utopia series, which is this kind of like sprawling generative landscape. It's these like shapes looking a little bit like buildings. Everything's black and dark, but everything's lined by these LED like lights. And in the very center is a kind of pyramid, a ziggurat of sorts, with a giant beam of light coming off of it. And Renee was clicking through this piece, or interacting with it, moving it around and zooming in and zooming out of certain sections, and it was just blew me away, right? It was the first time, I think, maybe I didn't fall in love with crypto art, but where I really felt that there was so much more to be explored in digital art than I had previously thought possible in visual artistry as a whole. Coming from a writer's background, I've always had a rather um, self-important idea of literature versus the other major art forms. But this kind of blew me away, and his other works too, Ignition and Resonance, are blow me away. The detail, the extreme amount of interactivity. Uh, it, I think it's hard to show them to people because you have to kind of go from your wallet to the art block site to a certain rendering off the art block site, and then you can really get into them. But yeah, boy, that piece really blew me away. And I still, I could collect anything that guy does.
For me, like the whole generative art thing really came out of left field, I think, for a lot of people, like
Mhm.
an unknown unlocking of demand. So I would love to, I mean, if you have a theory about, because it's so interesting. I am not this person, but I think there is a type A personality that is probably attracted to crypto as well, that is very also attracted to the way like code can produce art, and the way like logic and formation and like generally like neat and clean things can be reproduced in artistic ways.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
I don't know. I
we,
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
I
no, no.
just,
What were you gonna say?
I mean, we couldn't be talking about like two more different experiences,
Yeah.
right? Like, uh, Gel Deuce, we'll call it, and like Max Osiris, and like one incredibly messy and one like incredibly precise and defined. And it's interesting just to come at it from opposite ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had kind of a fascination with generative art from the beginning. The aspect of controlled chaos of the thing, rather than I think the unleashed chaos of like the trash artists and Max Osiris specifically, right, where you really feel the entropy on the artwork is, captures that kind of like ecstatic momentary inspiration. And then you have these works where, maybe the back end is even more of a mm, like perfect demonstration of that chaos, but what we
Mhm.
actually see are these, like you said, hyper precise lines. And yeah, I mean, the generative art boom has been really wonderful to see, and some of my favorite artists are generative artists. And I'm constantly, I think the thing that makes me most or gets my goat about generative art is that I don't understand it at all. Um,
Yeah, sure.
a- and I'm sure we've all had the conversations. God knows I have, back when I was a snot-nosed teenager and thought I knew everything about, oh, Renaissance art. Now that's art, right? You can really understand the talent, the brushstrokes, the whatever. And the older I get, the more I'm less interested, or I guess the less I'm interested in things that I can readily understand and explain. The more interested I am in things that seem to defy my entire, breadth of knowledge, limited or expansive as it may be. I'll leave that to others to decide.
Yeah, there was something well, I will stay positive, but I will say there is in thinking about generative artists, the one who really caught me in the beginning, and I know caught a lot of people, and then they kind of disappeared from social media for a while, was Manaloide or Manaloid. I think Argentinian, and just you would not believe that it is generative. It's almost like impossible to believe. But just like the shapes and the colors and the vibrancy and the aliveness, and I think there's a lot of pieces there that are super special.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like the beautiful thing about the space as a whole, and one of the reasons, and this is not a segue as much as it is a rather elegant continuation of a thought. But like, I love crypto art, and one of the things I love about crypto art is how much mastery of various forms there just are, and how like open and easy it is to access just this incredible outpouring of true artistic talent. I mean, it doesn't matter whose art you're looking at, right? Whether the people who've been accepted as like the upper echelon of the space, or, you know, artists who are just kind of flooding in now. There's just so much talent that's so evident and so on display. And I bet if we asked 50 people their 50 favorite generative artists, you know, most would have a different answer. It would be somebody they saw at the beginning, or someone whose Art Blocks project really caught their imagination. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to fall in love with it's hard not to fall in love with things you don't understand, but which affect you anyway.
You know, there is an incredible magic to it all, and I can think of like many times where people were like, "Oh, they just did this, right?" Or they just did this, and uh, you know, whether it's like a certain brush or filter or whatever it is, I think there was almost like there's a beauty to that, and you know, I kind of also go back to the trash movement about how that really redefines like the creation cycle, and how quickly you could make a statement, and it didn't matter that you were using like Artbreeder in the beginning for early AI works, or Photomosh for putting on filters, and it was really more about the experience of just creating and expressing. And I know just a lot of people feel so perhaps like stuck in a rut right now because they haven't really felt the freedom to create and mint, because they feel like everything has to be selling. And that's really something that was so beautiful, is that everybody felt free, and there was nobody saying like, because this took 5 minutes to create, that it's garbage. No, in fact, that was celebrated. And because the tools were accessible, that was celebrated.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about trash art too, because that was something I don't remember the exact quote that you said to me, but I'll paraphrase you. But you had been talking about trash art rather offhandedly, and you had mentioned its ability to capture like the emotions of a moment, like within that moment, right?
Yeah.
And the artwork is less about the artwork itself and more about the context of the artwork, right? It's like conceptualism brought to its like very most like internet antagonized momentary self, right? The examples I'm thinking of, and something I wanted to mention was, we have two pieces in the Mocha Genesis collection that are almost entirely imitative of each other. That's Message About Digital Garbage by Fabiano Speziari, and Whatever by Yurguz. And both are, you know, a monocolored background with some hastily drawn, looks like Microsoft Paint letters that say Photoshop filters are not a good reason to create digital garbage. And you know, I've had the experiences, as everyone's had, of maybe not everyone, but a lot of people in our space, I'm sure, where you're trying to discuss abstract or conceptual art with people who don't really have a background in it. And you know, I remember going to MoMA once with my younger brother and staring in front of I don't know, some canvas that had like two white triangles on it. And he's like, I don't really get this. I'm like, yeah, it's hard to get without the context of the thing, right? And I look at these two pieces by Fabiano and by Yurguz, and it's like, it just speaks to the sensibility of this moment, right? These works were deemed fit by their artists to be minted, right? Purposefully low effort, purposefully of whatever like literal day that was, the conversation that was happening on that day.
I mean, look, that was a real battle. Like, that piece was way outside of Fabiano's practice, right? That piece is like a statement in a body of work. right? Because that is somebody who has like an artistic practice, an artistic career that was kind of personally offended by what was happening, saying like, this is outside of what artists do. This is like not particularly couth, and we shouldn't be celebrating just like the creation of digital garbage. And of course, that the other piece in yellow was a response to that. You know, like, let's take that, let's put like a SpongeBob meme filter on it and call it our own art. And you know, like, you know, this isn't, it's like, who is to say, right? That never stands the test of time, is like, who is to say? There's another incredible piece by Hexiosis, who, if people don't know, does these incredible geometric like tunnel expanding pieces, very meditative. And you know, he released a like a conceptual piece that was white with black words on it that was like crypto art or crypto art, and all of these tropes about the thing, like bull, unicorn, spaceman, palm tree. And it's very, very funny. And that spoke really, I think, to the freedom that people were feeling in just being able to express themselves.
Yeah, I think it also takes conceptual art, which in my experience, has been kind of ivory towered, and it has been communicated to people as something that they cannot or should not understand. And it just says fuck you to all of that. It completely brings it down to the level of, you know, trash, right? And I think the fact that the trash art movement is called trash art is really indicative of its values. It is not meant to be, you know, pondered over by academics in lowly lit rooms with candles in front of, you know, an audience of you know, dissertation writers. It's meant to be like experienced by people because it's not so serious after all. And I feel even now the confidence to talk about the stuff that comes from having it delivered from its academic background to, you know, the community itself. And I think that these like interplays between these very low effort pieces and being able to see them in the context of an artist's whole body of work, like you were mentioning with Fabiano, I just think that that's so important, right? When you go to a museum, you don't get to see the entire breadth of an artist's work in front of you to know whether something stands out or kind of blends into a larger artistic statement made over many years or a long period of time. You can go on to Super Rare, you can go to Foundation or Maker's Place or wherever and see an artist's body of work all kind of in front of each other, and you can note when something stands out, when it's, you know, when it's strange or meant to make a statement. That stuff is not lost in the crypto art world because you can see everything kind of all put together.
You know, it's interesting to point out because the okay, right? NFT has become all about the market, right? But crypto art was always about like the message. It was kind of taking the speed of cryptocurrency, the free flowing transmission, like the global digital access, you know, everything that we talk about: transparency, permissionless, immutability, uncensorability, right? And like baking it into that expression and letting it go. You look at, you know, generally traditional art, and there's so much more intention because the process to create took much longer. But when you have a filter, you slap it on, you send it out, and that is forever. That it like time stamped in that moment. People, of course, couldn't be that responsive, and that's what I enjoy about like the process of the museum: is how do we respond as quickly as possible in real time to what is going on in the ground and begin to like capture and lift it up.
Interesting. I want to ask you about a piece of art or pieces of art that you've made, and you know, in the context of this conversation, because you make the Magic Internet Money series, where you kind of throw an abstract amount of paint on real dollar bills, and you hand them out to friends, loved ones, people at NFT conferences. But then you also have the kind of digital equivalent of those. And I think it also interestingly plays in the kind of conceptual world of value, but in a way that seems very like down to earth. Doing it on physical dollar bills. I will shamelessly show off mine, which I keep always on my desk. It's a Colborne Bell original right there.
That is true.
That is true.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, you know, I think while you like to, or while you often set yourself apart from artists themselves, I think you always talk, or you often talk with some distance. You know, you're engaged in this larger conversation yourself. What sparked the creation of like Magic Internet Money, and what sparked the interplay between the digital and the physical?
I mean, like anything good in my life, it's always heartbreak, right? It's always like hurting and searching for an outlet of how to like express or heal or communicate that. And for whatever reason, that symbol continues to like come up in my life and just get reinterpreted. I think it's very accessible and simple, which I like. I like to give it away for free. And then there is, of course, like that whole conception of value. What is this? Can I spend it? Is it illegal? There's all these weird other questions, but it's like really like, what is the value of that? And people keep them close. They keep them like in their wallets. They don't spend them. I like that. And I like people thinking about money differently and currency differently and value differently, and like how you can put your mark on something that is so generic and make it new and alive.
Which I feel like, and I know we've given some hate to the open edition meta going on, but I feel like what Robness was doing, or what Robness did with the right-click save as guy, Xcopies piece, where he basically, which is a CCO piece to be fair, but he took it, right-click and saved it, and then reminted it, and then sold it, right? And I believe it got a massive amount of mints on that contract, just as a continuation of this idea about, what's value, right? Especially when I try and explain NFTs to people who aren't in them, the question of, I could just, the whole right click save, idea itself, I can just right click and save it and put it as my phone background, put it as my computer background, have it, printed out, put in my house. Well, it's about where it came from, and it's about, the context of its creation, however many hundreds or thousands of Robness recreations of right click save as guy, even though it's exactly the same artwork, like literally exactly the same artwork. Well, it's just not as valuable as the original because it doesn't have the context. It doesn't have the blockchain paper trail leading back to the original artist. Just going back to trash art, it just seems that this conversation will never die, right? It seems like there's always a new something or other to say about the state of value.
It's a wonderful exploration, right? For me, it's much more interesting than tokens. It speaks to individual identity. It speaks to all of our group identity. It speaks to like memetics. It speaks to like the things we own, defining who we are and what we touch and make ours, and like the energy we impart and the energy that is shared. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, obviously not Robness's first foray into taking something else and just making it his own.
Yeah. Well, that's what got him kicked off of Super Rare, right?
He stole the 50-gallon totter from Home Depot, put it through PhotoMosh, and uploaded it. Yeah.
And then the Bitcoin symbol and the Ethereum symbol, right? He did the same thing.
Symbol, the Ethereum. He's done a ton of appropriation art.
While we're on the topic, can you talk about what it was like as that was going down? What the conversation was like?
Yeah. I mean, it was tense. Again, we were like a small family, and it was there was a very clear continuum of decorum, and I remember it kind of being like fun and funny, and a lot of people went from wherever they were to Rarible to kind of support those artists. And that was really open and experimental and cool, and Super Rare might have felt like a place for more finished works, but I want to see all of like the spectrum. I think, for example, like Neurocolor minted some incredible works outside of what he was kind of known for on Rarible, like hand-drawn sketches or like super quick hit glitches, or like sketches of like cockroach, just like incredible work. And I liked that. I liked the roughness and the rawness and like the unpolished work.
Yeah, fascinating. For those of you in the audience who may not have the context about what we're talking about with Robness specifically, he had minted an artwork called 64 Gallon Toter, which was just a picture of a garbage can, like a large garbage can from a Home Depot website, threw a photo mosh filter over it and put it on super rare, which they promptly took down. Um, I don't want to say offhandedly,
Copyright.
paraphrasing that. What was that?
Copyright violation.
Yeah, copyright violation. And then he did it again with a Bitcoin symbol and an Ethereum symbol, and they took those down because it wasn't, original art. And every time you poke the bear of this is an art, it's going to provoke a response. The fact that trash art is still going on, and now spam art has launched almost off of that ideology, is testament to that.
Yeah, shout out Jay DeLay for sure. Jay DeLay, brilliant thinker, teacher, also incredible creator. What was I gonna say? Like when Lamborghini came into the space and DMCA'd, do you know how bad that look was? Like everybody just turned that against Lamborghini.
Actual Lamborghini, right? Like the actual company.
The actual company, and
Yeah.
of course there's a ton of crypto art influenced off of Lambo, whatever. So I know like Big Comic Art and Sinclair and a lot of other people were going through it, and I'm like, look, they're not going to sue you. Right? Imagine. And if they do, frankly, you like want them to. I remember Max Osiris got like DMCA'd by the Basquiat estate, and he took the letter and drew like a shitty cartoon mouse on top of it, and it was hilarious. So that's the stuff that kind of gets me off.
Sure. I'm wondering, just to switch things up a little bit, if there was a time, or when there was a time, that you really felt love from the crypto art community. It's well documented that you give a lot of love back. So I'm curious when that was reciprocated.
Like me personally, or just like I'll say after that third-party Mocha token hack of whatever the token supply provider was, that was brutal. That was probably one of the worst days of my life, as far as just like. But I'm telling you, like, not a single person complained about price, and everybody was so supportive and like understanding, and just wanted to do whatever it took to see the project succeed. That was really special. That's just one of those things when you realize that it's way bigger than any one person. It's just how we like care and move forward and look after each other. That was cool.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what you have spoken about a lot, and about what Robness has spoken about a lot, which is in this original crypto art family, and especially those who have been there for each other, right? Like there was so much artistry supporting artistry, in a time before there was a lot of collectors. It was a lot of artists who were buying each other's work and forging these connections. And like you said, it was just a small little family at the beginning, right? That kind of reciprocity. Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, it feels like it felt like a massive reaction to like individualism and hypercapitalism, right? How these systems really like push and pull on individuals to have to do it all for themselves. And we're really not that way as humans, right? We are socially connected beings that want to feel like we exist in community. And we like we've been losing that, like the idea of a third place, whether it's a church, barbershop, whatever, a congregation place, especially in America. And then with COVID, we lost the second place, which was like a workplace, right? So all of these things that begin to socialize and bring people together and make them feel connected, we had lost that. So like finding each other in those moments and building up was such a wonderful and like loving feeling to what was feeling like a pretty cold world.
Yeah. And honestly, this is why I continue to be so bullish about like the metaverse, even though it has kind of been forgotten by the mainstream media narrative, or just kind of poo-pooed away. I was showing my dad yesterday Mocha Rooms and our newest exhibition with Making It, in the space, and being able to walk around the space and see these artworks on the walls of a real space. And he was like, wow, this is really something. And I said, okay, but imagine this in VR, where it feels realistic and there are other people around and you're talking to them and you're interacting with them, right? That third space, like you said, on demand. And I think it's just, I can't get the idea out of my head. And even when it's kind of, like I said, poo-pooed by masses of my peers, that underlying familial aspect of finding a congregation place seems so important now more than ever.
I mean, some of those early experiences in VR and Somnium Space, I remember like walking around with Ferocious and like flying off a mountain. We watched like the sunrise over a lake. That it felt so real and it was so enjoyable. And that was an experience that we had like, all the way across the states from, I think they were in Nevada at the time and I was in New York. But, we run into each other. We still talk about that.
Mhm.
So I mean, the digital experience is just better. I don't know what to say. It's more enjoyable.
I mean,
And
I can think of, yeah, the least communal community space is the art museum, right? You ever have a nice interaction with another person at an art museum? No fucking way.
yeah, it's not meant for that, but there is like, again, there is just like a freedom to, that's kind of why it was like super funny when Zuckerberg was talking about like having like a zone of like a bubble where people couldn't interact each other. I remember going into VR chat when I first got VR, and like there was a group of kids playing, they were calling it COVID tag. So they would like run up to you, they'd cough on you, they'd cough into their microphone, and then they'd touch you, and they'd be like, "You have COVID, now you're it." And I thought it was just like
Jesus
the
Christ.
funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, but like those kinds of experiences are things that I think that you and I have had that have not been accessible to very many people at all. And I remember being in the church and it was the first time I was able to visit the museum itself, the Mocha Museum in Somnium Space through VR goggles. And it was an entirely new experience. And, you weren't in the world with me, but you were physically beside me. And I'm telling you what I'm seeing, and you're commenting on what I was seeing. And it was a communal experience, even though for all intents and purposes, we were in two different spaces, right? Like there's just such value in that. And especially when I think about how we experience crypto art through Twitter, which is so solitary, right? Um, it's so solitary and it's like achingly solitary. You don't
It's
know where to jump
really
into a
breaking
conversation.
down. Yeah, it's really,
Yeah.
really breaking down.
Yeah. It seems like we've hit the limit of how interested we can be in art when it's so segmented and we're not able to experience it alongside each other. I think that's why we rely on things like, this podcast or this stream or Twitter spaces or Discord chats or places where people can just have any semblance of a real-time conversation as opposed to this very fragmented, I'm seeing a comment that someone made and then there's another comment that someone made and I don't really know the timeline in between those. It's not a conversation. It's more like a call and response over a
It's like it's
chasm.
totally broken, right? Because there is no actual connection to reality because so much of it is bot driven, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if I was telling you, but there's, like a well-known influencer left a heart emoji under something that we posted like 2 months ago. It has 2 likes, but like every day it gets 2 more retweets from a bot. So it's like 2 likes and like 137 retweets. And I'm like, okay, well, this person is like obviously paying for their stuff to, get promoted and pushed. And it's just like not fair because again, there's those that have the system and those that don't, and the people that have the system generally use it for sales and marketing.
Mhm.
So what is this? This is just like the next evolution of sales and marketing, but we're staying positive.
Absolutely. Well, and
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, how do we get back to this space like it was originally conceived, where it was one of love and community over this kind of, competitiveness that I think has been born out of the segmentation. I'm curious if you have any offhand thoughts about that or um
Well, I will say, what has been nice is like over these years meeting people, learning about people and figuring out who actually gives a damn and coming back in this market and finding ways to collaborate and work together.
mhm,
I think everybody knows like the forces that are against us, but the market needs to die so that new things can be born and new people can come together and like things can grow and solidify. It was so nascent that everybody was like, people that are attracted to new things are generally, of course, like visionary in their own right, so they create all this value in the beginning, and then all of these profiteering people come on top and just like learn how to talk about it in the way that the actually, I think, like intelligent, hardworking, decent people do, and then they just use the systems that they already have in place to market and sell it. So it has to return to that stage again where people that actually care and want to see this thing like succeed are having intellectual discussions about how to advance it. And it has to be intentional and not so fervent and kind of like laden with all this crazy bull market stuff.
Which I feel like is something that you see, or that I've seen at like NFT NYC last year, for instance. And I didn't go to the conference, but all these kind of satellite events, and you know, oh, we're going to get tacos, and I'm meeting Art Gnome for the first time, and it's just this, there's all these artists around us, and it's just talking about his experience, my experience, our experience, the space's experience, right? And you're constantly moving from space to space of all these people who you're realizing are all around you. They're all interested in the same thing. We're all wishing for the same thing. We're all, everyone, I think, even from the top down, even those who are, hyper successful with this model, barring a few examples, I think are looking to get back to something that is more familial, more community driven, more collaboration based.
I mean, let's think about this vision that you have and how do we actually get there, right? Art is unfortunately probably like the most abundant commodity in that equation, right? It's probably the easiest to create a JPEG, but how do we get like people that are actually building free and open metaverse worlds? How do we get people that are going to be building these integrations? Like, what is the crossover between like sophisticated developers, engineers that actually give a damn about like online culture and want to bring VR opportunities and this connection to the masses? It's a tiny pool of people. But I know they're out there like finding each other. Who are the architects that want to design buildings? Who, what is like each step of that layer, and who is undertaking that work?
And if you are an architect who would like to design a building, we have our Mocha Room design applications open. So please get in contact with one of us.
In the DMs.
But I think that this is why I have such a continued fascination with artist collectives, where I feel like I mentioned making it 24/7 every week, and I'm writing about them for an article coming out next week, and we're exhibiting them in our newest exhibition, Children of the Internet. But this spirit of collaboration and community, and the more I learn about this group specifically, right, it's very organic, it's very disorganized, for better and for worse. It's very, it's not every drop that they've had, because they do drops, I think, somewhat monthly, has a different amount of artists releasing work, and that all those works sell out in 24 hours because the artists who don't sell, well, their peers are buying. And it seems like it takes away this idea of sales as a zero-sum game, or something that can only benefit one person at a time. And I really just love that spirit.
People are finding their nodes, right? And the way all the nodes communicate and relate to each other that's the coolest thing in the world, but it's way easier for something like Mocha, which embodies maybe like 20 people internally and like thousands of people externally, to communicate with an organization like Making It 24/7, which embodies like 30, 40 artists, and have some sort of value discussion there. And that is like how scale gets built. So I would encourage everybody to begin to like find the people, the communities, the values that speak to you, and during this period, really lift those up and then facilitate dialogues between those nodes.
Yeah, definitely. We hear all the time, oh, keep our heads down and build, right? The world is going to, spin madly on. You got to just keep your head down and build. And that doesn't just mean building software. It doesn't just mean building applications. It means building networks and communities and collaborations, and finding these really unique and creative ways to, show support and show compassion and show community. I think that continues to be why people flood into this space, why people stick around in this space, what attracts people to this space, why people want to build whatever they're building in this space, because of that spirit of community that once you get a little taste of, right, Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just some chat room, but this real kind of three-dimensional seeming communities that are built here of interests and personalities and you know un like degeographied. That's not a word, but like
Without
sans
place.
geography. Yeah, without place. Like I think that's really appealing and it's really attractive and it's almost addicting. I think that's why
It's
so
really
many
addicting.
people who have been here for a while are very staunch and that they'll see it through any downturns, any winters, any negative trends because you don't have that elsewhere, right?
I mean, the people are good. The people are great. The people are why I come back.
Mhm.
I wouldn't know where else to go. I've not found this like incredibly like free thinking, interesting, progressive, like that just want good for people, and other people. That's why I come back every day.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I have to say, like, perhaps a bit selfishly, but I've been writing for a long time. I've been, writing every day for 10 years. And it wasn't until I came to the space and started releasing work in the space that people started to say nice things about me. And, like Mr. Ritchie, for example, is constantly, who I've never met. I love his work.
I
Super
got to
nice
meet
dude.
Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Ritchie's cool.
Yeah, seems like an awesome
Yeah.
dude. And he like comments my name on posts that people I've never heard of are saying, who's the best, I'm making a list of all the writers in the space. And like those little outpourings of support and those, like, that's something I've never gotten elsewhere. I have a million short stories that have never been published that are sitting on my hard drive and a million blog posts that are just gone to the internet ether. And it seems like you put a foot down here and people flock to it. I mean, not every foot, um, gnarled, hangnailed, maybe not, but
Look,
I
genuine love and respect and care, it is appreciated because it's so rare,
and
right?
it's here though. It really is here.
It's here, and people appreciate it, and that's why people are here, right?
Mhm,
Because of that honesty. And that's, it's not about like, again, my problems with bubblegum positivity are are deep, but it's about honesty, and it's about like being truthful of the situation, and letting people know that they're like, it's always been about that they're like seen, they're heard, they're respected, and that their creation is valid.
mhm,
That was the only thing bidding on an artwork ever did, right? It didn't matter who held it. It was just like to know that like, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, we see you and you're valid.
mhm.
um
Well, it
and
reminds me
that's
of that
cool.
that old maxim, and I apologize if this offends you and your birthplace, but what they say about the East Coast versus the West Coast is the East Coast is uh, kind, but it's not nice, and the West Coast is nice, but it's not
Facts.
kind.
Facts.
Um, and like I feel that all the time as I walk through New York, and people are just they're not smiling at you as you cross the street, but they'll might hold the door open for you.
I mean, there's a
Um,
reason why I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. Even all
Yeah.
the way in the,
And not
snowy reaches of upstate New York outside of the
and
city.
not and not in California, man. That place is tough. And the people that,
But I
whatever.
but I think it explains a lot why you and I have to make a conscious effort not to devolve into negativity. Because it's not the word naysayers or not the word, pessimists, because I don't think that explains or that describes either of us at all. But it's hard to see some of the most beautiful people and aspects of this space and experience that and know how it feels to be a part of that, and then also see such transparent financial pandering at times, such laziness, such manipulation elsewhere to the detriment of this beautiful thing that I think has really affected both of us in profound ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first, for whatever reason, it works again and again.
Hmm.
Um, and I saw it once in 2017. I've seen it again here. I'm sure it's happening in marketplaces all the time. There is a roaming band of grifters that just moves from thing to thing, and I'm sure that is nothing new in human history.
Sure. Well, let me finish up here. I want to throw a lightning round at you.
Sure.
All right. So first of all, just top of your head, artist you love.
Any artist that I love,
Yeah, any artist who.
I don't know, Max Osiris.
All right, just leaning back on an old favorite, I see. Okay.
Yeah, you know, my brain. An artist that I love. I mean, you know, you know, in front of me, I have like a Dmitry Cherniak work. I have this Die with the Most Likes work. I have a Kenny Schachter piece. I have something from Andre Zegelbaum, Matt Cain, and Solange. That's like what is in my, yeah.
What about an artwork you love?
Any artwork? I get these questions all the time and I hate them so much.
It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, the first one that came to my mind, oddly, is Jason Ebayer. You know them?
Yeah.
A 3D sculpture that I picked up on secondary market of one of his nude female figures. Gorgeous.
Yeah, I love Jason's
also
work.
Reminds me of Frenetic Void's Corsair, which was one of the most. It was when I saw it was the most beautiful piece I'd ever seen in VR. And to this day, I swore up and down that was going to be the first piece to sell for $1 million. It's fantastic.
Fair enough.
Yeah, go check it out. Yeah.
And finally, what's a trend you love that you're seeing right now? You got to pick something. No negativity.
I know. I'm such a critic. I love the way people are continuing. This is going to be a bit of a bailout, but the way that people are continuing to, the way that AI is pushing the limits of digital abundance, who can be creators and what we're creating, and then how we begin to like pull some of that out of the morass and begin to call it art. I just find that is going to be a fascinating and interesting conversation for society to try and wrap their noodle around for the next like 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
5, 10, 15,000 years, maybe.
Right. You know, until our AI overlords overthrow us.
Who we love, by the way. We love our AI overlords.
I'm a super good data generator.
And I just like to smile. All right, Colborne, most importantly, the Celtics play the Pistons tonight. Jason Tatum's back in the lineup. Marcus Smart's back in the lineup. Who you got?
Are the Pistons any good at all? I feel like they haven't been good ever.
They're very
like early 2000s. Yeah, they're so bad. I got the Celtics, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say I'll be out in Paris next week for NFT Paris. If anybody's out there, shoot me a line, want to connect. I'll be there 22nd to 26th. Would love to just meet some new faces and people that give a damn and love art.
Yeah, I'll be in Brooklyn thinking about Paris. So if you have pretty pictures of the Eiffel Tower or the Seine, you can send those over to me directly on Twitter or Discord.
We'll everybody that meets me, we'll take a selfie and we'll send it to Max.
Just break my heart a little bit as you uplift me. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to our Mocha Live podcast stream for this week. We will be back next week with ace photographer and crypto art legend Giselle Flores. We're very excited to talk to her. So stay tuned and we'll see you here next week. Thanks so much for coming along.
Peace and love.
Deuces.